Merry Christmas, friends out there in YouTube land. I'm getting a lot of interesting responses on social media. I'm Max Abramson. If those of you who don't know me, I'm a state representative. I'm running for president on a libertarian nomination. If you haven't seen what's going on with the campaign, you can go to maxabramson.org. That site is updated pretty frequently. And if you can't afford to donate to my campaign, go to the top of the screen and click Donate 55. But if you'd like to volunteer and help out, either build the Libertarian Party or help with my campaign, just click the contact form. Noticing some really funny remarks on social media today that show that the Libertarian Party is not doing as well as we could messaging to our members. The first one that just sitting there on my phone, just kind of scrolling through what people said, and I noticed this one on my Facebook feed, and he says, this is from Tyler Smith. He says, that then compromises, talking about the immigration issue, that then compromises the very premise of individual accountability, which is a hallmark of our platform, in that in most liberty-minded people's agree, it's not your duty to protect me from myself or others. Well, that right there shows that we're doing a terrible job of messaging. Libertarianism is very, very simple, based on the harm principle, as I like to explain it. When I'm going campaigning door to door, I don't use the map, I use the harm principle, as you've seen in my other videos. Government exists to protect us from the wrongdoing of others, not to protect us from ourselves. That in a free society, we have the right to make our own decisions, or as Thomas Sowell likes to say, if you're only free to do what you choose, so long as it meets the approval of others, are you really free at all? So any action that you take, as John Stuart Mill used to say, he says, when you choose to enter into a society, to live near other people, that where he swings his fist about is limited by the proximity of the next person's face. So you can do anything you want. You can punch yourself in the face. It's not my job to protect you from hurting yourself. However, someone else attacks you, comes at you with a knife, driving recklessly, someone tries to run you over, what have you. Our limited view of government, there are lots of different types of classical liberalism, or there are lots of different strategies to protect individual liberty, your right to live your life as you see fit, so long as you're not harming anyone else. Libertarianism is a strategy where we limit government as much as possible, where the size, scope, power of government is limited as possible. So Tyler Smith, if you're out there, you're getting it wrong, and he goes on to say, you're being a government proxy, and I think you should be saying "your" with an apostrophe. You might want to go to you're obviously product of the public school system. It's not your fault. It's government indoctrination camps. I'm seeing really, terrible grammar. Now I will say this: back in the '90s and the aught decade, and even the early teens, most libertarians on forums and on media were generally pretty well educated bunch. Tended to read a lot of books, and consequently grammar and spelling was, pretty clear. There's been a big growth in the liberty movement, but it's been from people who aren't reading Bastiat, aren't reading Friedman, aren't reading Rothbard, or any of the other books. They're kind of listening to Free Talk Live, which reaches an audience of like 200,000 people. They're hearing from anarchists. They're hearing from people who are just against the system. It's very easy to just be against the system. Next comment I notice, but breaking it down to say, you have the right to act however you want. You have agency. You own yourself. Who owns your body? I'd like to think as an adult, I own my body. This is even funnier. Here's Erin Pyle. She's a campaign volunteer for the Kim Ruff campaign, and she's really upset that I'm pointing out that Kim Ruff is violating the Dallas Accord. The Libertarian Party is, since 1974 at the Dallas Convention, both in writing and implied and further. There's just been the universal acceptance that the majority of Americans support Ron Paul, constitutionally limited government type of candidates. In fact, Ron Paul, I posted in the last couple of days, was polling at 49% to 47% against Barack Obama. Not only was Ron Paul reelected for 26 years to Congress, he always voted with the Constitution, never voted to violate your constitutional rights, and he was definitely a great protector of liberty. And I had a lot of libertarian friends who said if they ever write Congress, they just send a letter to Ron Paul because they know that their own member of Congress wasn't going to do anything. But he's reelected for 26 years. He polled pretty highly in 1988 for president, despite, as usual, media blackout and very little funding. In 2008, 2012, we worked really hard on the Ron Paul campaign to get the word out there. He'd been elected and reelected on Ron Paul libertarianism in his district. Even when the Bush cartel tried to redistrict him, he was able to still get reelected. But the bottom line is we can see that Ron Paul libertarianism, or constitutionally limited government, limiting the size, scope, and power of government so that it's just dealing with the bare basics, national defense, secure borders, foreign policy, not too much else, then we can push things down to the state and local level, 50 different solutions to 50 different states on drug policy and so forth. That's done real well. Politically, we've gotten great response from people from across the political spectrum. Anarchy, open borders, a lot of the hardcore positions, they don't sell, and so I don't try to sell them. I only advocate for what I know. Almost all libertarians are for a lot less government. So Erin Pyle is really getting on board with the Kim Ruff campaign. Kim Ruff on her website. By the way, all the presidential candidates, we get along really well together in person, but it's just some of the volunteers when I think they feel like they're promoting their candidate by tearing other people down, and you end up with a lot of hostility among the volunteers, and instead of a productive presidential primary, you end up with a lot of problems. In my opinion, Kim Ruff, Adam Kokesh, who's a longtime friend of mine, Vermin Supreme, whom I've known for a long time, is a really cool guy. They're campaigning. Second. Throat's getting a bit dry. They're campaigning on a platform of anarchy. They're anarchists. That's fine. We welcome absolutely everybody into the Libertarian Party, although they're anarcho-socialists and anarcho-communists now for the first time. And I'm not 100% sure. I'm not going to put any of them down, but that really seems like an oxymoron. You can't be a libertarian and a collectivist at the same time. So Erin Pyle's giving a lot of angry responses about me criticizing Kim Ruff for not following the Dallas Accord. I'll leave it up to you as a voter, as an individual, as a delegate, if you're going to be in Austin in May, to decide whether or not Kim Ruff is following the Dallas Accord or not. But on her Kim Ruff's campaign site, she identifies as an anarchist. When she goes on the podcasts and interviews, she identifies as an anarchist. Is she campaigning as an anarchist? I'll leave that up to you. But she's definitely taking positions that are unquestionably unelectable positions. And so I respond back, I prefer a fair fight to all this sneaking around. I think most libertarians know about the Han Solo reference. When people say, well, what is a libertarian like? Who is that like? Han Solo from Star Wars is probably, by some accounts, the most libertarian character, although there have been some new sci-fi movies like Firefly and a few other good shows that have some libertarian characters. And of course, Captain Jean-Luc Picard of Star Trek The Next Generation gave a lot of really good libertarian speeches. So I post the Han Solo reference, and he says, never tell me the odds. And she doesn't get it, so I'm saying Han Solo equals libertarian. If you don't get the reference, no need to be rude. Well, she is. And then she says, Jesus, Max, quit dodging the question. And I'm having to say this again and again and again. She's just not getting it. Thomas Perry says, obviously, you aren't a real libertarian. Garrett Ian's also a longtime friend who says, supports borders, that equals socialist or non-libertarian. Well, let me tell you what, in politics, when I got into the Libertarian Party, they said that Republicans are basically socialists and Democrats are basically communists. And I haven't really seen a whole lot of evidence to the contrary on that. I do know a lot of Republicans who are actual free market capitalists who would reprivatize almost everything, localize and reprivatize most of the functions of the federal government, just get things down to the local level or reprivatize them. And I'm glad to see that Adam Kokesh is also promoting those ideas. I would say, and it's just my impression, that Adam Kokesh, although he is an anarchist, he is at least following the Dallas Accord, and he's proposing localization, and that's selling pretty well. I've always said that things are better handled at the local level, whether through local churches and local charities or local towns and local schools. Except in politics, the communists, closet communists, are all for open borders within the Democrat Party, and the Democrats and rhinos are voting for open borders. They're voting for sanctuary cities. They're voting to actively interfere with immigration enforcement, to flood the country with as many illegal immigrants as they can, knowing full well that their activists are going out and getting illegal immigrants to go register to vote Democrat. And that's a political mechanism that they use to get Democrats elected in a lot of city centers where it would be impossible otherwise. A few comments from Roger Bowman saying modern liberalitarians, and he gets a couple likes. Someone else says nail meets the head. Don Stevens says, oh goody, another example of the LP eating themselves. So the commentary is kind of going off on a tangent, and this is why I say, and this was brought up at a discussion at Libertarian Party of Washington years and years ago. How do you market to people? How do you expand the party? And there are a couple different ways to do it. One is to say, oh, the two parties are all just exactly the same, which they're not. They're definitely different, but neither one is libertarian. Oh, they're the same. Oh, all government is the same. And kind of, this kind of cynical attitude doesn't actually get into libertarianism. It wins lots and lots of new members. It brings in lots of new people, but it's kind of like going to the dark side. You're not getting into dividing between good action and bad action. Why have dash cams and body cams except to videotape police interactions so that we can see the 90% of cops who are good shouldn't have to suffer for the 10% of cops who are bad. The 10% of the cops out there are just real criminals and real thugs, and good cops and good citizens shouldn't have to suffer for them, and juries shouldn't have to keep acquitting people who may be guilty just because they can no longer feel like they can trust the police officers who are testifying. And if you don't have dash cam or body cam to record the interaction, a lot of criminals get let go. Worse than that is a lot of innocent people are getting convicted and going to prison. Or courts are getting so clogged with false charges and false accusations that innocent people are sitting in prison for 2, 3. One has been sitting for about 3.5 years in New Hampshire jails. Then there have been a couple of Facebook pages that have come up specifically for the purpose of trashing libertarians. One's called Fakertarian. Another one is Scientific Libertarian. If you want to go look at that, it's the most unscientific and most unlibertarian group. And guess what they do? They talk in generalizations. I am not one to say you're not a libertarian, except what it is fundamentally is about individualism. Private citizens and public officials, whether they're elected or unelected, everyone must be presumed innocent until proven guilty. And even more fundamental than that, innocent until proven guilty, is that if you're going to accuse someone of something, that you better be able to back that up. If everyone is innocent until proven guilty, whatever the accusation is, if you're not giving people the benefit of the doubt, then you're not helping. You're not helping the cause. This is just what creates a lot of drama. So this kind of marketing to people who believe that all government is bad, or all cops are bad, or all military, or all this group or that group or the other is bad or good. Or Voltaire described Europe as every man is either the hammer or the anvil. Well, Voltaire is clearly a libertarian. In fact, he's one of the original libertarians. Never mind what was said at convention. The real original libertarian is probably John Locke, although some people would give it to Thomas Hobbes. Even before that, you have the letters of Cato the Younger, which were supposed to have been discovered. You know, these Roman letters. Cato the Elder was this arch-conservative, and Cato the Younger was the libertarian. He was concerned very much about liberty. Free societies that are only partly free, people enjoy their freedom, and they tend to want more. Early America were expanding rights and liberties to everyone, women, minorities, Indians, ending slavery. People were saying, well, freedom is such a great thing, and it produces so much better results, that it produces a more responsible society. Why don't we do this for everyone? And so you had conservatives and libertarians in early America for a long time working together against the Democrats, who were for slavery, segregation, gun control aimed at people of color, and a lot of other really bad policies. Republicans in those days were more libertarian than they are now, and they were very much concerned about just protecting life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness for everybody. They were really more about the expanding those rights to everyone. But the biggest one out there is open borders versus secure borders. Again, I keep hearing open borders advocates saying that they just want to have background checks, criminal background checks, some kind of vetting process of some kind. And I hate to be the one to break it to you, but the only kind of open borders there are open borders among states. They're just geographical lines limiting state migration. So if you want a national border where there's some kind of checking, vetting process to make sure that people aren't tied to Latin American drug cartels, have a criminal history, what have you, among state borders, people just cross state borders willy-nilly, and there's nothing getting in the way. You just drive across a state border. That's an open border. If you want a secure national border with any kind of check at all, that's secure border. And when I actually talk to most of the open borders crowd, they're actually supporting secure borders, but with no limits on the total number. So I asked this question: if you support open borders without background checks, would you allow 1 to 2 billion people to come into our country from terrorism hotspots? Oops, I didn't say high crime. This one is a map. I'm going to try and post as the opening screen. And it just shows where all the terrorist attacks have occurred and where the worst of them and largest death numbers. And of course, they're primarily focused around the Fertile Crescent in the Middle East, which is a very, very high terrorist area. Some crimes, some mass shootings, mass killings, and bombing events are getting counted as terrorist attacks. So it's actually really difficult to narrow down, well, what's a terrorist attack? So people will just get randomly blown up in the marketplace. And I've been to a lot of these other countries where high crime and terrorism are very common, and you walk down the street and you just see the looks on some people's faces, and they're either living in absolute terror, they're trapped there. They can be very racially stratified. They can be, even within a race, they can be very much divided up. And they attack all foreigners violently, very, much worse than xenophobic. Other streets you go down, and we have tourists go down the street even during the daytime. You don't go down without a bodyguard. You don't go down the street even during the daytime without friends. You don't go anywhere by yourself. Because you'll wake up in a bathtub full of ice, and you'll have a kidney or some organs missing, or you won't wake up at all. Some countries, if you're a blonde woman traveling down the street by yourself, you will not return to the ship. You will not return to the plane. You might be worth 500 camels. And people in poor, starving countries, People are desperate, and people who have no respect for the lives of others, you're going to die. No one knows what will happen to you. So I asked the question on this thread again and again and again. What's the maximum number of people you would allow if you're for not only open borders but unlimited immigration? And the question is, would 1 million, 10 million, 100 million, 1 billion, 2 billion, 3 billion, 4 billion? And I keep asking the same question. What's the maximum number before you finally say, okay, we're overwhelmed, we're overwhelmed, we're overwhelmed? No answer. So then I finally post, simple yes-no question. 0 yeses, 0 nos. And Anna Sophia responds, Max Abramson, I got a yes or no question for you. Denny's or Waffle House? So no interest in answering the question. She's another open borders advocate. So I say, would any open borders advocate simply give me a number of how many people you'd let move in before they finally cut it off? No answer. Then I say again, still no straight answers. Finally, again, I get the argument that public land shouldn't exist, that it's all private residences, private lands, and any libertarian would understand that. And actually, I do understand public versus private land, and this is just like my previous video. Most libertarians would reprivatize most or all land, or at least get it down to the local level, get it out to the hands of the federal government. But that's something completely different. The nations have the right to decide who they admit into their country under the Constitution. And open borders folks tend not to be constitutionalists. They tend to be anarchists. But even if they're not, my question is, why is it that every Western society on earth has limitations on immigration and has secure borders? I think that Singapore might have been the last Western country to finally kind of cut it off and limit immigration to just what they can handle as a city-state. Matt Edelman asks the great question, yes, and if they do commit terrorist acts, punish them then, but stop treating people like terrorists before you have any evidence of them committing terrorism. That's not the question. The question is, right at the top of the screen, would you allow 1 or 2 billion people to come in from high crime countries and terrorism hotspots? The question is not, do I go punish that person? Do I go put that person in jail? The question is, red or green button. Do we limit immigration or stop immigration from high crime countries and terrorism hotspots with 10 to 15 times higher homicide rates, out of control terrorist attacks going on, car bombings and attacks of the public square all the time? Do we allow them in or do we not allow them in? You have all of these other countries where we can continue to allow immigrants in with certain limiting the numbers. But if you allow populations to come in from terrorist countries, if you allow millions and millions of people to come in from parts of the world where you have 10 to 15 times higher homicide rates, if you press the green open borders button, we know what the result will be. Millions of those people coming in, or let's say 1 billion people come in. The hundreds of thousands of murders, rapes, kidnappings, beatings, burglaries that are committed in those high crime countries, if you move the population into the United States, those same millions of murders, rape, kidnapping, beatings, burglaries would happen wherever those people are. You don't move people across a magical line and have those people just suddenly magically change. If you have no vetting process and no background checks, there's no way to stop people who have ties to terrorist groups or multiple prior convictions or people with ties to Latin American drug cartels from coming in. So still waiting for a straight answer. I'm not going to wait here. I've got stuff to do. I don't really expect to get a straight answer because the open borders crowd on the totalitarian left never gives you a straight answer, and I don't expect any open borders advocate to give me a straight answer. If you really want to have a kind of, like a state border on our national border, how many people would you allow in? Give me a straight answer. What's the maximum you'd allow in before you finally said, let's put a stop to it? Would you have any type of vetting or background check process? I just want a straight answer, yes or no, and you can explain from there. Go ahead and post that down in the comments, and let all the viewers of this see that in the comments, so that that final question on social media of electability, which I've been posting. The other way of looking at the Dallas Accord is, for those people who want to completely do away with government, who want to have very, very unpopular, unelected positions, I ask the question, would you legalize the kidnapping, rape, and murder of small children? Yes or no? Straight answer. Would you legalize it? Would you legalize everything? Would you completely do away with the criminal justice system entirely? Would you completely do away with any punishment for anyone, no matter what they do to anyone? Simple, yes or no. Not, would you legalize marijuana or legalize sex work or indoor sex work or something like that? Would you legalize people kidnapping, killing, raping, robbing other people? Would you do that? And put whatever description you want, but please start with yes or no. I want a straight answer. I'm really tired of the deflections from the open borders crowd. I'm sure there's got to be an open borders advocate out there who will give a straight answer. So put that down in the comment section. And please hit like and subscribe. Please share this video. And please remember that Ron Paul got reelected 26 years straight. I've been elected and reelected to Budget Committee, Planning Board, State Legislature by giving straight answers. And I'm a Ron Paul libertarian, and it works. It's electable. It's electable in almost every state and almost every community if you just go door to door and give people a straight answer. If you stick with the harm principle, you have the right to live your life as you see fit, as long as you're not harming anyone else. Don't ever restrict people's freedom to do what they choose, so long as they're not harming anyone else. And people remember that. People remember my campaign slogan, a vote for maxes for less taxes. If you want to argue with people and show people that you're right, whether you are or not, stand for what you believe, but don't tell people that all libertarians are for everything that you agree with, because we all know that libertarians differ on all kinds of issues. The Libertarian Party is just about getting back to constitutionally limited government, limiting the size, scope, and power of government, preventing government from, in the enforcement of federal laws, violating anyone's constitutional rights or engaged in racial profiling or what have you. And also please go to either Abramson2020.org to volunteer and see events, or go to maxabramson.org, which is the campaign site where we put up kind of a blog and the latest and greatest. So stick to the Dallas Accord. Let's keep the Libertarian Party electable. Let's help our down-ticket candidates. And most importantly, when voters ask you a straight question, give a straight answer. Don't deflect. Get right to the answer. How is this going to affect me and my life? Don't get off onto some crazy tangent where you tell them that they're wrong or you know better than they do. That kind of elitism is what's killing the Democratic Party. The Democrat Party went from almost 2-to-1 majorities in the 1960s. Then they started showing off their elitism and condescending attitude on TV. People saw it, they hated it, and now they have a hard time maintaining a majority in Congress or state legislatures almost everywhere. In fact, they pretty much lost all of Harry Truman's America because of their condescending attitude, and if it weren't for their vote buying and voter fraud, they'd probably never win an election. So don't talk down to people, just give a straight answer, stick to the harm principle, and somebody out there from the open borders crowd, please give me a straight answer. What's the number? What's the maximum number that you take? Is it 1 billion? Is it 2 billion? Is it 3 billion people moving in? And would you have a vetting process or some type of criminal background check of some kind? Post that in the comments, and see you guys on the other side.